Hello and welcome to week 8 of Cycle, Synch, and Chisel. This week we are going to be discussing how we apply most, if not everything that we've been learning. How do we apply it to life? Okay, this is I think all of these lectures have been really fun and insightful, but this is where it becomes a little bit more applicable. I will say, referencing previous week's lectures are going to probably be a part of your learning process, right? It'd be unrealistic to think that we would just memorize all of this right off the bat, right? So hopefully these lecture slides, the PDFs, are currently in a state that you can just have quick access, right? Whether you print them out or just have them saved somewhere, quick access where you can go through and find the information that you need in a pretty concise fashion. And moving forward, as we're getting closer to the wrapping up of this cohort, you will always have access to any documentations that I produce in the future. I need to figure out how that is going to be possible. It'll probably just be you continue to remain on an email list. So every week when there's a lecture, you get the updated PDFs, but as I'm learning, I will always be updating these slides, right? So as new information comes in, I'll update them. I also plan on doing a kind of like a perimenopause and menopause course of some sort, whether it's a course or maybe even just a lecture one day. But if you stay in communication with me, you will have awareness of when that's happening. All right, so let's dig in. So week 8, again, applying this to life. Our objectives today are to really take a moment and see what we've been doing, which is observing. So for a while now, for 8 weeks, we've been observing. We might be also implementing things by this point, but we've been becoming better and better at observing and building awareness, and that's going to lead to mastery. This basically applying to life. Eventually you get to a state of mastery where you don't have to look at those notes. You just know. You just know this symptom, this red flag, this cue that my body is giving me means that this is going on. And I know exactly what I need to implement. I must be short of this nutrient, or I must be, a little overstressed with work, right? We start to really, that's mastery when we don't even need to look at the notes anymore. So we get there. It takes time, but we get there. We're going to talk about how basically you can cross-train your life and your hormones, and that leads you to becoming your own health coach, which I would say is kind of going hand in hand with mastery. But again, you are your best resource. You know exactly what's going on. You know how your body should be feeling, and you are truly your own health coach, okay? An educated health coach. You don't get a certificate for this, but you don't need one. You just know your body, right? We'll talk about the red flags for each part of your endocrine system. Right. So that's basically putting together, we just went over blood sugar, adrenals, systems, organs of elimination. We'll also talk about your reproductive organs, but we'll list out the red flags that pop up for each of those areas. And so then, go back to those chapters, go back to those weeks, those lectures, and the nutrients that you need. Most of this stuff is going to be solved, just as a reminder, through diet. Some of it will be through stress reduction, getting more sleep, moderating exercise, whether that's increasing or decreasing. But most of these symptoms that we experience will be solved through diet alone, which is remarkable. Every meal, every day, right? Finally, we'll go through flow blockers, which we've discussed, but we'll talk about daily and annual flow blockers. We're always going to be facing them, even on a daily basis. So it's very important to know them like the back of your hand, right? You just know, I'm experiencing this. This is what's probably going to be happening. How do I remedy it? Again, how do you become your own best supporter, your own health coach? So again, mastery. Let's just take a moment to reflect. You've gathered the tools and knowledge to know how to stabilize your blood sugar, to nurture your adrenals, to support your organs of elimination. You're learning how to cycle sync, right? How to live your life in a way that supports your cycle. Again, you might still need to reference some notes, but you're on the path. To put any of that into practice, you've had to begin the process of observation. And this is you taking a second to slow down and assess like what's going on in my body. How is my body reacting to this? Oh, my cycle is 28 days for 4 cycles, and now all of a sudden it's 23, like, right? Just noticing these shifts. You have, again, through these weeks, you've learned different protocols to implement. And again, when you get to a spot where you don't have to reference those lectures anymore, that's when you are mastering it all, right? I'm not there yet. I'm still learning. I still have to reference. I basically walk around with this book. Literally, it's always in my bag. No, for real. It is. It's always in my bag. And then on my phone, I have a grocery list from, I think it was like week 2, maybe, a list of the foods that I should be getting for each phase of my cycle. Yeah, I don't know these things like the back of my hand yet, right? Still working on that. But our goal is to maybe one day get there, to be a guru, shall we say. So observation leads to mastery. You're going to continue to build awareness through this process. Even when you are in a state of mastery, you're still building awareness. You're always learning. Our bodies will, as much as we'd like to think, always be the same. We know that they're not. They're always changing. Always. They want to maintain homeostasis, but we age and things change. When you start to notice that things are shifting, just begin to ask questions. Is this like a natural process of aging, or is something, or some of these red flags that we'll learn in a little bit, is something like that happening, right? So always be inquisitive. The idea is to be in flow all the time, right? To literally just like live your life as you want to, but to know when things come in that could upset your endocrine system, really. How do you heal? How do you fix it? How do you right it as quickly as possible? That's the idea. So how do we cross-train your life with your hormones? These 3 bullet points right here are like easy starting points. So each and every single day, right? Alyssa's motto is every meal, every day. Starting every single day by front loading your body with the nutrients it needs. So again, in one of the lectures, there were the grocery lists or the food lists of what you would want to be consuming during each phase of your cycle. Remember, we don't need to hit every single food on that list. Try to find what's, seasonal and local, but front loading your body with those nutrients, that's super, super important. And by front loading, it just means start of the day, knock them out, right? Get them in. I would also want to include in this protein. We need to be protein forward. So start of the day should be, in my opinion, your biggest protein meal, start of the day. So protein and nutrients first thing in the morning. Okay. We want to also make sure that we're choosing exercise and really truly lifestyle habits that support us for wherever we are in that phase of our cycle, right? That is, again, that's like cross-training means training at various intensities to support a goal, right? That's my own definition of cross-training. So again, think of, you can't be overworking all the time, whether that's with work, like actual like paid work, or in the gym. You need to kind of go up and down a little bit, right? So again, listening to your body, where are you in your cycle, and choosing things that support that. And again, I just talked about this, but again, a lifestyle that supports your endocrine system, right? So where are you overstretching yourself, and what can you kind of pull back on, right? Knowing that some periods you can be very overstretched and you can thrive. And then some periods you'll have to pull back. So we've discussed that so many times, but just a review, that's part of this whole cross-training piece. The other piece is going to be, again, becoming your own health coach and learning these red flags and how to fully support yourself, okay? Your endocrine system is talking to you all the time. Can you hear it? Something we have talked about is how we become desensitized, right? We think that cramps are normal. We think that low back pain can be normal, and a small amount of cramps can be normal, but we think that erratic emotions and really intense carb or chocolate cravings, that any of those things are normal, but headaches, migraines, truth is we've become desensitized. We are no longer really listening to our body. Another great example, say you eat a meal and say like you eat gluten, just as an example, or here's, I always say ice cream, right? But say you eat gluten, and every time you eat gluten, you've done it now for your whole life, but you really truly don't feel that great after you eat something with gluten in it, but you've become desensitized to it. You just kind of think that that's the way it's supposed to be. We want to build sensitivity. So the more we follow the protocol, the more sensitive we will become, which means the more heightened we are to, ooh, that didn't feel right. That didn't make me feel my best. We want that. We absolutely want that. Can it have some like sadness to it? Yeah, because maybe, you know, maybe it is a gluten sensitivity, and all of a sudden you've got to be a little bit more mindful with that, right? That can, I love bread. That would be like a really sad day, you know, but we want to become more sensitive. Your endocrine system might, by chance, not be giving you any clues or symptoms, and that would mean that you're doing a really good job. But I would also question, are you desensitized, right? Have you just become comfortable with this discomfort? If you're getting symptoms, you want to evaluate. So you want to look at your nutritional intake. You want to look at how you're sleeping, what's happening on your body, right? Those types of things. And based on red flags, see what needs attention and then get to it. Becoming your own health coach is going to mean that you're learning how to maximize your hormonal health on a daily basis. You're going to be learning how to support your endocrine system when flow blockers come into the picture and like know exactly what to do, right? So again, at the end of this, towards the end of this lecture, we'll talk about our daily flow blockers and our annual flow blockers. So again, you being in control, you are in the captain's chair and you know exactly how to right the ship. So maximizing our hormonal health, don't take this the wrong way, but it can be fairly easy, especially if we take like emotions out of it, but it can be fairly easy because the endocrine system is super predictable. If everything's working the way it should be, the system functions in a very predictable fashion. It just works for all of us in the same way. If it's not functioning correctly, it will react in a predictable fashion. So the beautiful part about that is a functional approach will work for everyone because again, if X is going wrong, Y is going to appear and we know the solution is this. That's a really cool thing. And that's what makes it somewhat simple. Again, it can be more complicated than that. I think mostly due to really kind of attachment issues to comfort and whatnot and an emotional level. But yes, if we can take emotions out of it, it can be relatively easy to fix if there is something happening with the endocrine system. The reason it's so predictable is because the endocrine system always wants to maintain homeostasis. No matter what conditions are going on, what environment you're in, it wants to just be nice and even, right? It always wants to be even keel. The system was also designed to really protect our reproductive health, right? So that we thrive as a species. So, I mean, that's everything revolves around reproduction, right? So this is part of the reason why the endocrine system is so predictable. And I just kind of revealed this, but symptoms are the same across the board. So if you and I both were experiencing low blood sugar, we're going to present the same symptoms, right? It can get confusing because some of the different like red flags will share some of the same symptoms. Like say if you have overworked adrenals, that will present as low blood sugar symptoms, amongst other things. But you can really start to narrow it down and really be, play detective, be your own health coach, and start to find solutions. Building awareness around these red flags is really clutch because once you see that a red flag is up, you can again start to address it right away and not let it continue your suffering. In this course, you've already started to become super aware of what's going on in your body. And that's helping you build a stronger relationship with your body, which is amazing. Like so cool. I think a lot of us have lived our lives almost like a complete stranger in our bodies. So it's really beautiful to come in and build a very strong relationship with your body and work together, not as, I mean, so many of us women specifically, I think, have treated our bodies as like an enemy. So it's really quite nice to come into a space where you're in my tree, right? Loving kindness with your body of like, oh, I see you're in pain. I see this symptom is arising. Let me try to heal you, as opposed to like, fuck you, why are you failing me again? You know, it's okay if that sometimes happens, right? If you're going through some, you know, some continual struggles, it's okay to be angry, but to try to come back to just knowing that you're trying your best to support your body. Okay. So again, the red flags will appear in each part of your, well, let's say this, we can have red flags in these parts of your endocrine system. So your blood sugar, adrenals, organs of elimination, and your reproductive organs. When you experience any of these red flags, your job is to just kind of be resourceful and go back through the lectures, find the supplementation or the nutrients that you might possibly be missing. Okay. So when it comes to the red flag of blood sugar, if you have high blood sugar, trying to get, oh, I see what I can do. I can close that. There we go. Okay. If you have high blood sugar, you're going to get jitters, dizziness, anxiety, and hyperactivity. Low blood sugar, headache, shakiness, sweats, moody, irritable, and fatigue. Okay. With your adrenals, you will get red flag symptoms if they're overworked. Okay. So that's going to, when we think of overworked adrenals, a difficulty with concentrating and also memory is going to happen. Okay. Lack of stamina or endurance. You're going to experience most likely low blood sugar symptoms. So headache, shakiness, sweats, mood, irritability, and fatigue. It's going to be difficult to get out of bed in the morning. And then upon waking, you might even feel hungover. Insomnia will be a part of that, as will depression, anxiety, unfortunately, low libido, and low immunity. Red flags with your organs of elimination. For your large intestine, that's going to include constipation, diarrhea, IBS, and bloating. For your liver, you will present with food sensitivities and or allergies. And then you could also experience, after a rich meal or alcohol, some sharpness or a dull, it could be dull, pain under the right rib cage, sweating, and foul body odor. Wow, I had a hard time with that one. I was going to say something about the body odor, but it would most likely come from armpits and feet, specific to liver issues. Okay. With your lymph and skin, acne, so any cysts, whiteheads, or blackheads, I mean, almost all of us have had some degree of that, even if it's just whiteheads and blackheads. I think that we're talking more in like excessive amounts, right? The occasional blackhead, I wouldn't jump to the conclusion that you're having congestion. Remember, if we're having signs on the lymph, within lymph or skin, it's already, that's the last place it's going to show up. So we really want to go back to your liver and your large intestine and support those. But I would say that if you're getting like a blackhead, then you're probably okay. But if you're getting a lot of them, or again, if you have this whole little patch over here, there's something deeper going on. Rosacea, eczema, dandruff, oily scalp, and then again, body odor coming from mostly armpits and or feet. When we talk about the reproductive organs, we would want to look back at week 2's lecture. And in week 2, we went through what exactly should be happening in your body, which was titled vessel, during each phase of your cycle. So again, it would be normal to experience like a little bit of low back pain, or during ovulation, a little bit of discomfort because of the process of ovulation, right? If things like that are not happening, or they're going to extremes, it would likely be a link or a sign that there is something going on with estrogen and progesterone being slightly off. And again, just as a reminder, most of this would be cured via diet and possibly addressing stress. So we've been talking all in all about this protocol, how awesome this protocol is, and like why we want to stick to it. But what would be the benefit of coming off of it? Basically, you don't know how good it is until you feel how shitty it can be, right? So as you follow the protocol, you start to feel better, which is awesome. That's great. But life is going to happen, right? And so at some point, you will step off protocol. Basically, you'll go into some of these daily, so one of these daily flow blockers that we go over here soon is going to occur. And whether it's like, say you had a really busy day and you didn't eat enough, right? You, over time of following the protocol like pretty well, you become sensitive, which is again what we want. We want to become more sensitive. We don't want to stay desensitized, right? We want to be heightened. We want to be like really like hyper aware of like what's going on with our body, and does it feel good? Why does it feel good? When does it feel shitty? So going off protocol is actually like a really beautiful lesson in, I really like how I'm feeling when I'm living in tune with my body. I really appreciate how good I feel when I'm making sure I front load various nutrients, when I get enough protein every single day. So it's a way of reinforcing every meal, every day. And again, it's easier to make positive changes once you've experienced the negative ones, right? So say we overeat carbs one night and we wake up in the morning and we're puffy and our energy is really, really shitty and we're groggy and we almost feel hungover and, oh, now I got to get through it, right? Having that one experience might make us more informed, have us help us to have a better choice in mind for ourselves the next time we're faced with like, hey, let's have pasta at 9 p.m. at night, you know? So flow blockers are going to happen, and you get to become intimate with them, right? That is your choice, but like you get to choose to be intimate with them. And what I mean by that is learn what they are and how they make you feel. So again, come off protocol. It's going to happen. You don't have to like go out and like choose to be like, this week, I'm going to make sure I do this just to see how shitty I feel. You don't need to do that. It's going to happen. So just let it come as it does, but learn what they are and how they make you feel and like how your body responds to them mentally, physically, and emotionally, right? Build awareness around them. I know that when I eat ice cream in the moment, I'm like, oh my God, this is so good. And then about 15 minutes later, I feel so uncomfortable. Like my stomach just really does not feel good. And so in my pattern is like, okay, I'm just going to go to bed. I'm just going to put myself out and not have to like worry about what I feel like. But when I wake up in the morning, I feel slightly hungover. I might have some puffiness. I usually end up with a more severe outbreak, you know, and I don't know if that's the sugar or the dairy, but it's my body's response. These are things that come up mentally. I wake up depressed. I definitely am not like as eager to do my morning dance in front of the mirror. And I just in general have like a little bit of a darkness to me that day. I can shake it now at this point, but anyways, those are things, right? So just building awareness around. Same thing happens if I have a big bowl of cereal before bed. And I know that if I like have a carb-rich breakfast or say an amazing croissant with no activity, I plummet. And that's a blood sugar thing as well. But like, again, knowing how your body responds and knowing how your headspace responds to different flow blockers. Okay. When I'm overworked, I get really irritable, right? Those types of things. Interesting studies have found that when we have short-term and also long-term, but short-term goals, it activates the prefrontal cortex, which when that's active, your reward system becomes a little less active. Meaning if the prefrontal cortex is not active and I want to go have the ice cream, the reward system there is I'm going to eat the ice cream because the ice cream feels good. It doesn't really go beyond that. We kind of talked about this in one lecture where addicts tend to not have as active of a prefrontal cortex, right? We don't think, if we're not as active here, we do not have as efficient of a processing of consequences, right? So when the prefrontal cortex is active and say I have a goal, my short-term goal is regulation of my hormones, or for me to get rid of this acne. When that short-term goal is present, my prefrontal cortex is more active. My reward system is actually shut down or limited. So I'm less apt to go for something that in the short term will feel good, but in long term is not going to feel good or service me, right? So reminding ourselves of our why, of our goals, can be really, really helpful. That's where journaling can be, like if we're really going after this, right? Writing something down in a journal every day. My why am I following this protocol? Why am I going down this journey right now? I'm hitting all these roadblocks. I'm frustrated, but like, here's my why. Remind yourself of your why daily, and that can help your prefrontal cortex be a little bit more ignited, and it will likely help across the board. Okay. Yeah. And so the more you're able to tap into how your body feels based on what you feed it and what you do with it, the more you'll start to see the spillover into other areas of your life. And a perfect example of this would be in the bedroom, right? So if we're burnt out, we're working like a dog, we're reaching for quick fixes. So like Red Bull and a granola bar, we're skimping on exercise, or maybe doing 6 HIIT classes a week. When it comes time to get into bed, like the last thing that's likely on your mind when you're this burnt out is sex, right? And then you have like a disappointment to your partner. You might even be disappointed in yourself. If they touch you, or if you actually follow through with having sex, you're actually like not even in your body, right? You're desensitized, right? You're kind of just showing up for them to do their thing because you want to be a good partner. And there's this disconnect. So again, motivation to really make this switch of how can I show up in the most support for myself. And it really starts with waking up and having this idea and this attitude of, I'm going to start my day with the best choices for myself. Every meal, every day, I'm going to start with lean proteins, healthy fats. I'm going to make sure I'm getting enough vegetables so that I can get those micronutrients. I'm going to work on calming my mind. I'm going to fit in the correct or the right choice of exercise for where I am in my cycle so that it fully supports me, right? And it doesn't happen overnight, but doing those things, again, helps us become sensitized. If we are sensitized in our body and really listening and respecting like where we are in our body, we will be able to avoid burnout. We just will. And we won't be doing these cyclical things that actually keep us desensitized. So we've increased our ability to sense. And then when we go to have sex, it's a totally different experience. We're very present in our body. We are home in our body. And when our partner touches us, it lights us up as opposed to us almost like escaping and leaving our body, right? So it's like, if you're having any issues with libido or just intimacy in general, truly believe, because it's true, if you start to prioritize front loading, just front loading alone, start your day with as much nutrition as you can, take a little time for yourself, make sure your movement is in accordance where you are at your cycle. Just those things alone will affect positively what's happening in the bedroom. Okay, so that's huge motivation right there. Life is going to happen. So here's exactly how to be prepared. Okay. Flow blockers happen daily and annually. And the best way to become your own health coach is to know what they are, be able to identify them, and then have the tools to best support yourself. Again, remind yourself of your why. These are just some things that I listed that come to mind for me, but continual health. I want ease of hormonal symptoms. I want help with mood regulation. I want to increase my energy. I want to stop having those afternoon energy slumps. I want to improve my libido, because I like what I just talked about definitely has happened to me. I always say that I'm a morning sex person, but that's because at the end of the day, I'm just literally burnt out, right? So I would like to not be burnt out at the end of the day and still like be able to go to sleep calmly, but be able to show up for my partner. And then the biggest one for me is preparation for perimenopause, right? I want an easier transition into menopause. Maintaining really any positive forward thinking mindset is going to be super, super helpful. But like, again, in the morning, what's going to best support me and my goals, right? What is that going to be? For like 3 weeks, every morning, I woke up, still had my mud water with my protein powder. And then instead of going for decaf, I was like, fuck it. I just want fucking coffee. And I would make my coffee. And for the last 3 weeks, every single afternoon, I tanked. And for like the last 5 days, I switched back to, again, mud water with protein and then decaf. And I'm so much better. So it's such a silly thing, me and coffee. I swear I can tell it's not the real deal when it's decaf, but like, you know, anyways, I do feel better on decaf. So I need to ask myself, I need to put a little sticky note. What's going to best support me? It's having decaf. First thing. Andrew Huberman, I know not everyone's a huge fan of Joe Rogan, but 2 weeks ago, I believe Dr. Andrew Huberman was on Rogan's podcast, and I love Andrew Huberman. I think he's absolutely amazing. But they had this very long, 2.5 hour conversation. And one of the things he reminded me of is avoiding caffeine for the first 90 minutes of upon waking. So avoid caffeine for the first 90 minutes upon waking. When I tell people that, they're like, oh, you got to be kidding me. Like, what are you talking about? The first thing I do is before I brush my teeth, I go start the coffee, right? Get outside, get some sunlight onto your eyes. For me, that's not happening, but I start teaching my class. I have the decaf and like the movement wakes me up, right? But there's something within caffeine, and he talks about it, and I should have better notes on this. But when we ingest caffeine first thing in the morning, basically our body utilizes that. And so when we crash, it's because that has been depleted. But if you don't have coffee first thing in the morning, it's able to maintain its normal levels for, I believe, the entirety of the day. And so you never actually hit that crash. You can still have coffee, but just don't have it for the first 90 minutes. And again, I'm experimenting with that, and it's working. I still don't like saying that, but it's working. Okay, so examples of flow blockers. We know this, but there's endocrine disruptors, misinformation, cultural conditioning, and poor diet, right? So like highly processed diet, a diet that's lacking nutrients, GMOs. When we talk about endocrine disruptors, those could be toxic chemicals that enter through our clothes, through our curtains or bedding, like they're everywhere. The misinformation of not knowing what's going on in our bodies, not knowing our cycle, and then of course cultural conditioning that women are small men and that we should be intermittent fasting and doing this diet and this and that, right? Those are all flow blockers. But there are also daily and annual. So we'll go through each of these. They're listed here, but we'll go through each. So when we talk about skipped meals, this is going to happen, right? For me, I feel like it never really does because I'm like pretty food focused, food motivated. That's what I was thinking of, like, what do you call a dog who works for treats? I'm food motivated. Our goal, so every once in a while a skipped meal is going to happen. Say you're like on a tarmac, you get stuck there for a while, right? It's gonna happen. Our goal with it is to prevent a blood sugar crash and the cravings that are going to happen after that, because they will, right? If we aren't prepared, the cravings will happen. So our food solution is to have an emergency supply on hand at all times. So say we're traveling, you've got a snack, right? In your car, you've got snacks. At your office, you've got snacks. For me, I always carry a little jar of, for the show, I always carry a jar with a serving of protein powder. One serving of protein powder, I know that if I'm in a pinch, this will get me an hour and a half, 2 hours of like, okay, I can like keep driving, whatever. I can find my next source of real food, but have an emergency supply. You want to try to have that supply be protein rich. Okay, that's going to be pretty important. I'm not saying it can't be. Sometimes it is what it is, right? If you're on the airplane and they've got the snacks, please know that you do not have to take the airplane snacks. I know it's free. but you don't have to take the snacks. I grew up with a mom who was like, it's free, we take it. And it's like, you don't need to have that. You just don't. Oh my gosh, she's got like a collection of airplane snacks. And it's like, this is just wild. But sometimes you just got to eat what you got to eat. But if you have an option, try to make sure it's protein. Okay. Again, if you did just carbs, depending on if you're a slow burner or fast burner, it's going to lead to some type of spike in your blood sugar and ultimately lead to more cravings, right? That's your snack. That's like in the interim, right? When you just need something right away. Your next meal, make sure you get all macros. Macros, again, are your macronutrients. So protein, fat, and carbohydrate. Okay. That would be in your next meal. For each of these, just, there's an exercise and a food solution, and then there's some additional recommendations. But the exercise solution for this is after that first meal, squat, push-ups, do some stairs, something that's lunges, right? The reason for that is because after you've waited too long to eat, the body goes into starvation mode. And when the body's in starvation mode, it's like, well, fuck, we need to store this as fat so we have long-term fuel, right? So instead of sending it to your muscles, it's going to get stored as fat. By doing a quick bout of movement, and I'm not saying like go to a dumbbell, or sorry, I'm not like, you can just body weight squat, right? Just any movement is going to help. That's going to actually pull some of that glucose into your muscles, preventing as much of it from being stored as fat. Okay, so skipping meals ultimately leads to fat storage. Wild, right? Wild. We want to make sure we're not skipping meals. Okay, very, very important. Also, skipping meals fucks with your metabolism. We want to make sure that we are adequately fueled. Okay. Additional solutions, you want to prepare yourself. So say the reason you didn't have a meal with you that day was because work was just too wild and crazy, and kids in the morning, whatever. Say no to any commitments after work and go shopping and prep. This is why I love meal prep. If I don't meal prep, my nutritional intake definitely takes a hit, for sure. Absolutely. It's so important for me to meal prep. It's like life or death, truly. I usually can get by with one day of meal prep on Sunday. And then by Friday, I know I'm going into the weekend, which usually Friday, Saturday, I can kind of get by with just some lighter things. But anyways, meal prep is huge. It's so, so helpful. When we talk about those snack ideas of what to carry with you, try not to have hard-boiled eggs in like a closed public space, like an airplane. They can be pretty stinky, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. Hard-boiled eggs are a great snack option. Jerky, there are vegetarian or vegan options at this point. I've seen them plenty. I just saw some mushroom jerky the other day. Slices of deli meat for a vegetarian or vegan option. A serving of beans. I believe I've seen little pouches, right? Little like portable pouches. I know I've seen the bigger bags, and I think some of them are resealable, but that would be a great option. Protein powder, like what I do, or even like a yogurt, right? Kefir, if you could sip on kefir, that would even be good. There's plenty of protein in kefir. But remember, these snack ideas, we want them to be protein heavy, okay? When we talk about excess sugar, our goal with excess sugar and this red flag is we want to avoid stress to the body and minimize the body's physical response to food sensitivities. We also want to keep your bowels moving, because when we do have an intake of, say, usually refined carbs or excess sugar, it's likely going to slow down your transit time. And that can, of course, if these or your organs of elimination are slower, we have the chance of letting estrogen linger in our bloodstream longer. And right, we want to be flushing that out. So those are our goals of what we're trying to do when we ingest excess sugar. So we do this through food-wise, getting a B complex, and that's going to help support your adrenals. Okay. I always have trouble saying this one. Quercetin, I don't know, whatever it is, that's going to help calm your body's inflammatory response. Okay. Sugar inflames us. That's, again, I'm not sure if this is dairy from ice cream or sugar that's causing this, but sugar definitely inflames our bodies. Okay. We could add 2 tablespoons of flaxseed, and it's a fiber, right? So it's gonna help speed up our transit time. You would wanna just add that to your next meal. And you could also, here's a combination, right? A half of an avocado or even a quarter of an avocado with the 2 tablespoons of flax. I would imagine you could like mash it up and it would probably be pretty tasty. But that would be a perfect thing to have after a high sugar meal. If we're in the right appropriate phases of our cycle, exercise wise, you'd want to get in about 20 minutes of HIIT. Okay. If we're in the later portion of our luteal phase or even the beginning of our bleed, I would say go for a 20 to 40 minute walk. And just so you know, LISS is low intensity, steady state cardio. Okay. So that's where, like for me, I try to stay, I don't usually pay attention to my heart rate too much, but it's about like, I can talk the whole time, right? That's LISS. Okay. Additional solutions. If you're comfortable with it, talk to a friend about your goals. And so that's just like an accountability buddy, right? I know in a lot of partnerships, at least in my experience, I would always have sweets with my partner, right? So it can help to talk to your partner about that. And can the two of you settle on another option? Is that option, we're going to actually avoid sugar for this week, and instead we're going to try to just go for a walk. Like, does that help release whatever is coming up for us? Does that help with the urge for the sugar, right? We want to make sure also that we're getting adequate sleep and that we're also limiting any exposure to blue light, as that is lack of sleep and exposure to blue light is just going to stress out already overworked adrenals. So we want to try to calm them down. Okay. Herb Farm, as well as I've seen another company, I have it on my shelf, have this adrenal tincture, which if you know that your adrenals are kind of stressed out, it's a tincture that you can put under your tongue that is in an herb fashion going to support your adrenals. So that's, if you're, thinking that you've got overactive adrenals, this kind of goes back to that lecture, but you can do tinctures as well to support you. Okay, too much alcohol. Here we go. Cheers. I've really been enjoying teaching these and having like a little sip of wine while I'm teaching them. Okay, so your goal is to keep your pathways of elimination open, keep things flowing, especially your liver. And we also want to work on rehydration and rebalance your blood sugar levels, because when we do drink, just about every single beverage that we could be drinking that contains alcohol is going to spike our blood sugar levels, and then they'll ultimately crash. Okay. I think, again, a lot of us have become pretty desensitized to that, but it is naturally happening when we ingest alcohol. This is new to me, and I also don't admittedly know how to pronounce it, but for food solutions, which are really like, a lot of these are supplements, right? A lot of these solutions are supplements. Inositol, whatever that is, that's going to help detoxify your liver. Okay. So if you've been drinking, taking that, and I would say that you could probably most likely, if you know you're going to be drinking, you could most likely take that prior to drinking, along with glutathione, because we know that glutathione supplementation, we want to be trying to get it through food, but say we know we're going to be drinking, giving it a little boost through a supplement could be super helpful. Okay. So pre-drinking, try to get that glutathione supplement in. Vitamin C ester is going to work as an antioxidant to help combat stress that the cells are already facing. Our cells face stress every single day, but alcohol for sure stresses them out. A B complex, which is going to help you recover a little bit faster from dehydration. You definitely want to include an electrolyte mix before bed. I'm addicted to Element, LMNT. That's my newest. I really like it. It can be a bit pricey. I've fully committed to that. But on their website, they do have a recipe so you can make it at home. I have not tried that. I've been too lazy, but the recipe is there. And the next day when you wake up, you ideally want to have implement this green juice before each meal. So that's why it says 3. So it's about 8 ounces, and it's a handful of spinach, 4 celery stalks, half cucumber, to taste, cilantro and parsley. Remember, cilantro is very, very good for your liver. I know some of us don't like cilantro. So if that's you, you can absolutely take it out. The parsley would also the parsley is going to support you as well. Half a lemon with rind. I don't think you need the full rind, but at least some of the rind in there. Half of a green apple and 1 small carrot, right? That's a doozy, but should be clutch, full of nutrients to support you, okay? When it comes to exercise, I mean, if you're waking up post drinking too much, you probably don't feel that great. So light yoga, that's going to help calm your adrenals, but then all the twisting in yoga also helps with your organs of elimination, right? So whether that's a class or you just lay down on your floor and you do some supine twist and some seated twist, just get some twists in, okay? And just be really light and gentle on your body. Post drinking, your body is already going through quite a bit of stress, right? So it doesn't need additional stress. And that kind of goes into mindset. So when we wake up and we're not feeling great after drinking, we could have also made bad choices, who knows? But we tend to be really harsh on ourselves. And so just stop. Just be like, today's a new day. I'm going to make the best of it. I'm taking care of myself. I'm taking these supplements. I'm getting this green juice. For me, I just shared this great thing about Catholic guilt of like something like how, yeah, anyways, Catholic guilt is a real thing. And so like I've had that my whole life. Stop beating yourself up, just start new, right? Just start new. This applies to like, if you, on this next one, if you eat too many carbs, wake up, be like, cool, I did it. And I'm here, I'm alive. I'm going to take care of myself. Okay. Stop with the guilt. So late night carb overload. I want to preface this by saying there's absolutely nothing wrong with carbs. But if we recall, Elisa recommends like no grains, no carbs at dinner, right? I don't think that that's applicable to anyone who's doing strenuous training, whether that's endurance training or strength training. I think that plenty of us can do okay with a small amount of carbs prior to bed. I know that it's a great sleep solution for some people to have a piece of toast before bed, or it's like some sorts of carbs, right? But this is saying that you've gone overboard, okay? This is, again, like almost like a binge before bed. So our goal with this is to burn glucose for fuel as opposed to letting it be stored as fat. You want to also prevent dehydration, and you want to make sure your transit time is possibly, if possible, working a little bit faster, right? We want to increase our transit time. So the food solution for this is to drink a bunch of water before bed. Yes, you might wake up and pee, but drink water. You need to be working on rehydrating. Also including a probiotic before bed. It's not going to hurt you if you take it in the morning and at bedtime. It's not going to hurt you. But what it can do is help prevent candida overgrowth. So if those carbs, if your transit time is slowed down, if you have any susceptibility to candida overgrowth, the probiotic could support just kind of making sure that things are moving, okay? When you wake up, you want to make sure you have a protein-forward breakfast. That's true any day, but especially this day. I would say no carbs. And that's actually the next piece, right? Avoid most carbs the next day. Not forever, but just the next day. You can still include fruit, and you can still include root vegetables, especially if those are like where you are in your cycle. But avoid especially refined carbohydrates. And I would avoid like things like any rices, breads, oatmeals, that kind of stuff. I would keep yourself very protein and veggie focused for the day. Okay, lots of water, protein and veggie focused. Immediately following this carb overload, if you don't feel like you're gonna like burst, try to hit some stairs. And I'm not saying like, I mean, if you have a stair climber, you could do that, but just like if you have stairs in your house, just go up and down them a few times, right? Again, your idea here is to pull some of that glucose that's floating around in your bloodstream, to pull it into your muscles so that it doesn't get stored as fat, okay? Likely you're not going to feel like you want to do a full workout. So I'm not saying do a full workout, but again, it's just move your body. So some nights if I do this, I'll pick up a kettlebell and I'll do 20 squats. I put it down and that's it. 20 squats and then I'm done. But again, that's just going to utilize, and it just helps my head too. My headspace of like, cool, I see the sugars going into my muscles, right? We talked about mindset, but just as a reminder, don't beat yourself up. sometimes these things happen. Sometimes something tastes so good and we're just like, we go for it, right? Some questions that might be helpful would be, when did I actually feel full yet kept eating? Like, what was that point, and what was happening in my brain at that point? Was I just like, oh my God, this is too good, I can't stop? Is it a scarcity mindset that's going on of like, I'm never going to have this again? And maybe that's true. Maybe you are somewhere where you'll never have that dish again. But if, say, it's at home, like, what is that about? What feelings were you experiencing and maybe perhaps avoiding prior to the meal, right? Were you super stressed from work? Are you having like a uncomfortable conversation or tension between you and your partner? Are you numbing out, basically, is what I'm getting at. Like, what are you numbing? Might not be the case, but it'd be cool to ask yourself. Were you in front of a TV, your phone, computer? Were you zoning out? Were you mindlessly eating, right? And then what it might all come down to is you just didn't eat enough that day, right? So you were deprived. And so it basically led to an overindulgent experience because you've been deprived all day, right? Sensors were off, basically. Next, we're going to go into annual. So these are our annual flow blockers. So they don't happen all the time, but do happen throughout the year. When we go on vacation, we tend to have this mindset of just letting ourselves go, right? Yeah. Here's the interesting piece. When we're on vacation, we're not in our day-to-day, we're not in our norm, we're not in our routine. So we are less likely to be in autopilot. Everything around us is new. So it's actually one of the best times to start new patterns because you don't have your autopilot running. It's a whole entire new experience. So it's a fantastic time to implement new patterns or new behaviors. Your neural pathways are fresh. They're like excited, like sensory, like what's going on. This is the time to implement some new things. Now, we've gone over so much already in 8 weeks. You could pick like 1 to 3 things to implement on that vacation, right? I'm going to focus on making sure every breakfast has a lot of protein. I'm going to focus on making sure I get enough water every single day. And then I'm going to also focus on, God bless you. And then I'm also going to focus on, let's say, having a 20-minute walk after dinner, right? That's just an example, right? But those would be some ideas of new patterns to be incorporating, okay? Try not to let yourself go. If you do let yourself go, mindset, be okay with it. Know that when you come back, you're going to have to do some repair, right? Especially if you've been on protocol and you go and just like let loose, you're going to do some repairs when you get back. It's not going to come back right away, okay? It's going to take a little time. Remember, it takes about 3 months, 3 full cycles of working on this stuff, being on the protocol for you to notice change. So if you go off protocol for a week, it could take 3 months to come back. And that's, it's just something to consider, okay? Okay, say you're overworked at work. If you want to be functioning at your highest capacity, you want all the promotions, you want to be doing the best job, you need to be prioritizing your sleep, your nutrition, your exercise. So again, more motivation to make sure, like, work is going to always get crazy. It is. We think it's all like, if I just do this, it's going to like wrap up and I'll chill again, but the next bout comes, right? It's a vicious cycle. So this is motivation to improve your sleep, improve your nutrition, improve your stress reduction tactics, and prioritize exercise. The other important piece here is to prioritize self-care, right? If you don't put it on your calendar, it's most likely not going to happen. So start to put self-care on your calendar. That means putting your workouts on your calendar. That means maybe even putting, I meditate at this time on my calendar, right? We as women, I think way more than men, like to have like an idea of like what the day looks like. So put it on your calendar and figure out, like, if you want to be the most productive, again, you can't expect yourself to be operating at a certain intensity all 4 weeks of a month, right? There's going to be this natural dip. Take that into consideration. That's, again, lifestyle, right? Are we living in accordance with our cycle? We did talk about drinking, but say it's happening, say like with your work environment, or just in general, like your social circle, there's a lot of drinking. It happens, I wouldn't say just once a year, but it's like it's happening often. Start to think about the ways that you celebrate, right? Are you, when you're celebrating and you're drinking, it can be a way to escape your body. And we're trying to really construct a better relationship with our body. So like, how do we stay present in our body? So what are other ways that you can celebrate besides alcohol? Can you still go out with your friends? And no shame to them. Everyone is empowered and has their own choices to make, right? But like, if you're going to experiment this, like, what does it feel like to celebrate with your friends without drinking? If you don't want to not drink, see if you can limit your intake to 2 drinks. And with each of those drinks, try to follow each one with 8 ounces of water. You want to try to find low glycemic drinks. I don't fully agree with what she listed in here, but I know that tequila has a pretty low glycemic index. And then I believe vodka. Yeah. She has listed sake, champagne, which I have heard, which is so silly because anytime I have champagne, I wake up with a bomber headache. But then she lists red wine and then white wine. And I feel like wines in general have a very high glycemic index. So I'm going to do a little bit more research on that and find out truly what the best low glycemic options are. I do know that Guinness for beer is one of the lightest beers that you can have. And I'm like, whoa, had no idea, but I train out of a brewery, and that is according to the owner of the brewery, that Guinness has it's the lightest beer that you can have. I would imagine that some of these like super light beers now might be different, but he's talking about like a regular beer, right? And very important, before you do start drinking, make sure you have protein in your belly. So again, say like you just have protein powder, that's better than nothing, right? It doesn't have to be a full meal, but just get something in your belly, ideally protein. When we talk about holidays and family gatherings, I feel like almost everyone has something that comes up there. Boundaries are super important. I never knew about boundaries. I'm still learning about boundaries. I've tried to set boundaries with my family, and it was super uncomfortable, but it actually it has been so beneficial. Of like, when I travel home, I stay for 2 days. I have to go to the gym in the morning, and then I'm great. But those are my must-haves. Those have to happen. I can stay in their house for 2 days. Then that's like kind of the hard drop. That's the line. After 2 days, I have to stay somewhere else. And then I have to start my day with exercise, because that sets my mind right. That leaves me with more patience. That leaves me with more understanding and more empathy, just by going to the gym and taking some time for myself and exerting something. My family at this point isn't super active. They're older now. And so all of that sit time makes me super anxious, right? So I just need to get up and move. And, it's coming to a point now too, where like I'll move, I'll be like, I'm just going for a 20-minute walk. I'll be right back. So setting boundaries is super, super important. If you need to, stay elsewhere. That's huge. I think a lot of us think that like we have to either let family stay with us, or we have to stay with them. If we don't, we're going to hurt feelings. And it's like, space is cool. Space is really, really cool, right? It helps everyone. It truly does. Also, there's nothing wrong if you want your family to stay with you. But for those of us that have that kind of bit of tension, staying somewhere else can be very, very helpful, and reduce your likelihood to exhibit numbing patterns or coping mechanisms that actually aren't in support of you, right? So whether that's overeating, drinking too much, any of those things, right? We want to try to stay protein forward. So this is where I'm thinking, like, you go to Thanksgiving dinner, fill your plate with protein first. Or if you know that there's not going to be a lot of options that are going to like support you, give yourself a little something before you go, so that you can just, right? So that you can be a part of the meal, and not feel like you're, too much of a hassle for people to prepare certain things for you, right? Feed yourself a little something and then go, right? And really important, know your limits and when it's time to take some time for you, right? Step outside, even just step outside for some fresh air, right? Just give yourself some space. those things can really, really help. Okay. All right. So we're wrapping up our homework for this week. What red flags are currently popping up for you? Okay. I'm sure we all have something, right? We're going to assess and then use our previous lectures, specifically the last 3 weeks, to find the best ways to support yourself. So again, looking to see what those nutrients are that could be supporting you, nutrients and practices. I want you to write these down. So write down the red flags, go into those lectures, find out what you could be doing to support yourself. Maybe even make Post-its and put them in your kitchen so that you know the nutrients that you need to be having or seeking to have on a daily basis. And then I want you to reflect. I want you to reflect on the incorporation of those nutrients and those practices. Are you feeling supported? It might not happen right away. You might not. It's not like a magic pill, right? It might take a little while, especially if you're depleted. But like through the incorporation of these things, do you feel a difference? Do you feel supported? If you've noticed a difference, talk about it. Like, what are you noticing, right? Is it difficult to incorporate these things? Like, what roadblocks are coming up? I think that's really important to understand too. Is it a financial piece? Is it a time piece? Is it I don't like the taste of this, or when I take zinc, it makes my stomach upset, right? I forget, I don't think zinc was listed off the top of my head in any of the supplements, but I do know that zinc is helpful for acne, and zinc every single night makes me feel sick. And I get this wave where like I've yet to throw up, but every time I'm like, oh God, I'm like right there. And you're supposed to consume zinc with food. So I do, and I still feel sick, but I can't even imagine how bad I'd feel if I did not have a bite of something, right? So that would be something that I'd be wanting to write up, is like, yeah, there's this massive roadblock of I think I'm going to yak every single night I take zinc. Is it worth it? Is the acne worth it? And then curious, this is a challenge. You could choose to accept it or not. But what happens if you eliminate gluten for a week? Or if you feel good after a week of eliminating it, what happens for 2 or 3 weeks? The reason I'm bringing this up is because I don't tend to eat a lot of gluten. And this week I'm just entering my luteal phase, which is so textbook for me. I want bread. And I don't want just like, if I'm going to have bread, it's usually like a gluten-free Udi's. And it's not because I have a gluten intolerance that I know of. I've been tested as well. That was years ago, but I just like the taste of it. I think it tastes really good and it toasts really nice and it smells good. But every once in a while, I want a real deal loaf of sourdough. And so I went to the grocery store and I got like a quarter loaf, and I felt like this wasn't like the real deal sourdough. It was like slightly different. And I woke up in the morning and I had the biggest like bags under my eyes. And all I could think is it was something to do with that bread, whether maybe I was dehydrated, who knows, but there was something there. So I'm definitely going to go through this. I'm going to go through a week of no gluten, which is again, pretty easy for me because I don't incorporate it a lot. So open to you. I would love to, have some feedback of how it goes for you if you choose to embark on this journey. But the other option would be elimination of dairy, which I need to do more research on this. Raw dairy is supposed to be very, very different than, homogenized and what you can find at the grocery stores. So I'm going to be doing more research into that because I know there's a link between dairy and acne, and I think that link is not true if it's raw. So anyways, if you're doing dairy and you want to experiment with what it's like to not have it, that's also an option. But really here we're focusing on gluten. Okay, that is week 8. Next week what is next week? I should have this out, my bad. Next week, fertility and why it matters. That's interesting, right? So fertility and why it matters, even if you don't want to have children. I can tell you directly right now, it's going to have a lot to do with menopause. So we want to try to have peak fertility and be on top of like keeping our reproductive organs running as well as they possibly can for as long as we possibly can. And that's going to help with the transition into menopause. So, alrighty, I'm going to end the recording, and then we'll go over any questions that you may have. Anyone who's watching this on demand, please reach out with any feedback or any questions that you do have. Please follow through on the homework, and please reach out if you need any support. Okay, let's see here. Here we go.